All right. Can we give the band a round of applause, please? Because that was like real worship right there. Word? Oh. They're back. Where's Carter? Carter, you gotta... John, you gotta complete it. Oh, guys. I know. That's weird. I don't know who did that. That's weird. All right. So yesterday... Everybody good? What is happening right now? They're over here bargaining snacks. All right. So yesterday Jerry spoke beyond the surface level, right? Beyond the surface level in our relationships with people. Today we're going to be talking about beyond our faults and sins, how Jesus goes beyond our faults and sins. Who has their Bible? Oh my gosh, so many hands. All right, open up your books to Luke 15 and look for verses 11 through 32.
What did you say?
Luke chapter 15, verses 11 through 32. Luke 15. Luke 15. Yeah. Chapter 15, verses 11. I just seen you flip all of the pages. What are you doing, Mary? Man.
This is a new Bible. I don't know my ways around it yet.
Well, the New Testament's always in the same spot.
Still in the same order.
I don't think the pages are sticky. You need to get a new Bible. I don't know. I've never bought a Bible that the pages were sticky. All right, so... No, it's okay. I don't... Yeah. Anyway, so we're going to be reading on the prodigal son. And to give you guys some context, because I thought to myself, what if I put some context in here to take up some time and let my brain work? So, here's the context. Luke is writing about one of the many travels that Jesus did. This particular one is on their way to Jerusalem for the Passover celebration. So Jesus is stopping in all these different cities and telling all these different stories and basically establishing groups of, people to live it in the right way. Because religion back then kind of took a weird turn and became this weird exclusive thing, and only certain people were cool enough to be in it. But Jesus tells us everybody is invited into this religion, right? So Jesus is going through. He's told a bunch of people, "Hey, go to this city, let them know I'm coming, prepare them." And he's throwing all these dinner parties, talking to all these people. Pretty cool. Then he comes across this next city, and the religious leaders have set up this dinner. He's like, we're going to have Jesus come. We're going to have a dinner with Jesus. And Jesus is getting fed up with these leaders. He's laying into them. He's like, dude, you guys got it all wrong. And let me tell you how it's supposed to be. So he does this through the parable of the prodigal son. Does anybody want to read? Cassandra. It's a lot of reading.
11 through 32?
Yep.
Okay. Jesus continued, there was a man who had 2 sons. The younger one said to his father, Father, give me my share of the estate. So he divided his property between them. Not long after that, the younger son got together all he had, set off for a distant country, and there squandered his wealth in wild living. And after he had spent everything, there was a severe famine in that whole country, and he began to be in need. So he went and hired himself out to a citizen of that country, who sent him to his fields to feed pigs. He longed to fill his stomach with the pods that the pigs were eating, but no one gave him anything. When he came to his senses, he said, How many of my father's hired servants have food to spare, and here I am starving to death? I will set out and go back to my father and say to him, 'Father, I have sinned against heaven and against you. I am no longer worthy to be called your son. Make me like one of your hired servants.' So he got up and went to his father. But while he was still a long way off, his father saw him and was filled with compassion for him. He ran to his son, threw his arms around him, and kissed him. The son said to him, 'Father, I have sinned against heaven and against you. I am no longer worthy to be called your son.' But the father said to his servants, 'Quick, bring the best robe and put it on him. Put a ring on his finger and sandals on his feet. Bring the fattened calf and kill it. Let's have a feast and celebrate. For this son of mine was dead and is alive again. He was lost and is found.' So they began to celebrate. Meanwhile, the older son was in the field. When he came near the house, he heard music and dancing. So he called one of the servants and asked him what was going on. 'Your brother has come,' he replied, 'and your father has killed the fattened calf because he has him back safe and sound.' The older brother became angry and refused to go in. So his father went out and pleaded with him. But he answered his father, 'Look, all these years I've been slaving for you and never disobeyed your orders. Yet you never gave me even a young goat so I could celebrate with my friends. But when the son of yours who has squandered your property with prostitutes comes home, you kill the fattened calf for him.' 'My son,' the father said, 'you are always with me, and everything I have is yours. But we had to celebrate and be glad, because this brother of yours was dead and is alive again. He was lost and is found.'"
Round of applause for Cassandra Drew, everybody. Take a breath. That was a long passage. So you guys have probably heard this story hundreds of times. If this is your first time, it's a pretty cool story. I've heard this story 100 times, but I've never thought to myself, man, I can relate to this guy to a T, you know. I never thought to myself, I was a farmer son. I took my share of the land and ran off. But luckily, God has since, I guess, shown me not to take things too literally. So I thought the best way to go about this prodigal son story was to kind of go on and tell a story of how I was a prodigal son. The time that I walked away from my father, the time that I ran away, done a bunch of stupid stuff, and came back. So I'm going to get comfortable. So let's rewind a good 6 years. When I was a wee lad of 17, I had gotten myself in one of the craziest situations ever, a relationship. Ooh, cooties, I know, gross. And, you know, I didn't know what it was all about. I was a very sheltered young man out on a farm, out in the middle of nowhere. And then somebody came up and was like, "Dude, you're cool." And I was like, "Oh, I've never heard that before." And I just like fell head over heels, right? And, you know, it went. And then slowly but surely I started seeing things change in me. You know, I grew up in the church, First Baptist and Nazarene. And I grew up in the church, so I knew what was right and I knew what was wrong. Right, there's I had a pretty good understanding of what to do and what not to do. But I put myself in a situation where I let myself, you know, kind of do this game of, it's bad, but, you know, at least I'm happy type of situation. And so I kind of went down this road of this kind of take a little more and then make up an excuse of why it's okay. And I basically ended up turning to somebody completely different. You know, I was a Christian on the outside, but on the inside, I was completely not who I was. And this went on for a couple years. One relationship ended, got into another relationship. That relationship ended, and it was a big mess. And then I went down this really, really dark road where I was just done, fed up with life. I was like, if this is what it's got to offer, I don't want any part of it. I went out and, I talked to somebody about getting alcohol. And they went out and they got alcohol for me, and which was a big no-no. Alcohol's bad. And, I went on this binge of just drinking and doing stupid stuff. And I'm like 19 at this point, definitely not old enough to be drinking. Not that you should be drinking ever, but, and so I just was drinking and going to work, coming home, drinking more, going to work, talking to people I shouldn't have been talking to, and living life in a totally bad way. And then I kind of found myself at a crossroads where I've had dreams and callings and different people telling me, my parents coming up to me and saying, hey, you're completely different. I don't know what this is coming from and all this mess. And, it's the story of the lost sheep, essentially. God came out and he said, I've got all these people, the 99 sheep, they're fine and safe, but I want that one that ran away. So he went out and he grabbed me and he brought me back. And, it's been great, obviously. Jesus is awesome. But it wasn't just like you can flip a switch off really easily in terms of spirituality. You could just shut yourself away from God. But getting back to where you're supposed to be, admitting that you done wrong, as it says here, the son was squandering his wealth. He had parties, he got with prostitutes, he drank, he probably did whatever was the cool thing back then, if there was drugs, I don't know. And he was, having the time of his life. And then he found himself without money. He found himself in a dark place. And he ended up, selling himself out to be a slave. And he was like, man, I'm just hungry. I want better. And even this pig slop, which I don't know if any of you guys ever seen pig slop. It's disgusting. Think of when your mom's cooking in the kitchen and slicing all the vegetables, all the stuff that she throws away, like all the little roots of the onion, all the little scraps of the celery, all the stuff you don't eat, thrown in a bucket, sat for maybe a day or two in the hot sun, got all nice and juicy and fly infested, and then boom, pigs eat it. Ugh. And he said, man, that looks pretty good. And then he was like, whoa, what am I thinking? And then he came to his senses and he was like, I'm sitting here living this life and I think pig slop is good. When there's servants back at home who work for my father, who live a much better life, they have food in abundance, they have more than they need. So he says, I'm going to go back to my father. For me, this was the time that I was like, oh, I screwed up. I need to, repent. I need to ask for forgiveness. But in such, I need to somehow offer myself up to be sort of like a sacrifice. I just don't want to be who I was, and I don't know what it's going to take, but I'll do whatever it takes kind of vibe, And so then when the son goes back to his father, he's thinking up in his head and all the different apologies, all the different ways he's going to come up with this, talk his dad into hiring him. I'm sure his dad's hating him. He's going to go back and there's going to be this huge rage. But the father's already looking out, looking over the horizon, waiting for his son to come home. And then he sees him. And as he sees him, he runs out to meet him. And the son is, they come up to each other and the son's like, Dad, I screwed up. And I decided I would like to come work for you. I've sinned against you and I've sinned against God. But if I can make it up to you, I would like to work for you. You can treat me as one of your slaves. And he's talking all this, blah, 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 blah. And the father just hugs him. And for me, that was it was here at Kilmarnock. Worship is a big thing to me. It always has been. I always break down during worship. I don't know why. It just happens. And so, I was sitting here and I was listening to the worship, and in my head it was just, God, please help, please help, please help. I don't know what I'm going to do. I don't know what I'm going to do. He just said, be quiet. He gave me a hug. You ever feel God just hug you? I don't know how to better explain. Like, you could literally just sit there and just, and sometimes it's just a bunch of people around you putting hands on you. That's God, So, let me stand back up. Story time over. So maybe you guys can't really relate to my story. I hope not. I hope you guys don't have to go out and go on drinking binges and get into stuff that you shouldn't. But this is really more than just somebody being a Christian and then turning away. The story of the prodigal son applies to everybody. From the moment you were born, Psalm says, at birth, you were born into sin. From the time that your mother conceived you, you were sinful. So we were already separated. We were already gone, squandering our wealth while we were in our mom, which is a weird thing to think about because you're just a little baby. But somehow you messed up big time, okay? So we're all the prodigal son. God's already waiting for us to come back. I want to look back at the part where he came to his senses. And he's coming back and he's like, Father's like, give him the best robes. Give him the fattest calf. Give him this fancy little ring. He gets a gold ring and put it on his finger and new sandals on his feet. So we were born into this sin. We have all stumbled away from a father, but the truth is God forgives you, right? He forgave me. He forgives you. There's nothing you can do that's going to stop that embrace. But you got to go back, right? This wasn't intended to be a super long talk, but it was meant to be a deep talk. Everybody's got something going on. I've got something going on right now. I'm sure a lot of you guys do. So I just wanted to kind of come down on a personal level with you guys and just say, no matter what you've got, big, small, whatever it feels to you, God's out there and he's already waiting for you. Band, I know you just got done singing like 10 minutes ago. But can you guys work your way up? And as they work their way up and they're getting ready to sing, we're going to enter a time of response, but I don't want you guys to just stand up. I don't want you guys to just mosh pit, as awesome as that is. But I want you guys to actually take this time to think, what's going on with me? What do I need God to do for me? Maybe you've already had that conversation where you've come home. Maybe you just stumbled a little bit, or maybe you haven't even come back yet. Maybe you're still trying to find your way back. So during this time, I want to offer you a moment to take a step home. Take a step to Jesus. Kilmarnock is a powerful place. It's like a focal point for me. I'm sure it is for a lot of you who have been here before. And it's awesome. It's a time that we can kind of put everything aside and focus on God, feel God, right? So I want you guys to just take this time, bow your heads, close your eyes, have a moment of silence, listen to the words of the song, Make them your own. That's what worship is. It's taking this awesome song that somebody had felt God telling them to write and sing for us to hear, and maybe we couldn't come up with those words on our own, so God had to kind of throw them out for you. So I want you to take those words that you hear, and if something clicks, something clicks. All right? And don't just keep it personal. If you feel like something's happening with you tonight, you've got friends, you've got adult leaders, Jerry, Elena, Chase, everybody. Don't be afraid to step out. This is not a time for us to hold everything in. Faith is an outward thing. Good? All right. Everybody bow your head. As the band, we're going to pray. Dear God, thank you for this night. Thank you for everybody here. Thank you for moments like these where we can come together, quiet down, and just listen to you, listen for you. God, I pray that everyone here opens their ears, opens their heart, takes a step towards you. God, this isn't an everyday thing. This is a right now thing. This is a choice right now to step out, to move towards you, and you're just waiting with your arms open. You're not asking for anything. You're not asking for us to give anything but just willingness to be intentional. So God, I pray you keep us open-minded, open-hearted. Thank you for everything you do for us. Thank you for your son. For without him, we wouldn't have a purpose. We would just be living in a sinful world on a literal highway to hell. But because of his son, we got a chance, a choice. So God, thank you for everything you do. Thank you for everything you're going to do this week. In your name we pray. Amen.